Jesus' name, amen. Before we look at Ezekiel, I want to read Psalm 137, at least a little bit of it. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. There on the poplars we hung our harps, for there our captors asked us for songs. Our tormentors demanded songs of joy. They said, "Sing us one of the songs of Zion." How can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a foreign land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. And then he goes on to talk about both Edom and Babylon, and concludes with a very nice verse. Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them to the rocks. Pretty powerful lament, anger that's seen there. But that's what Ezekiel's about, because Ezekiel's the prophet of the exile. He is in exile with the rest of the people from Jerusalem. Daniel and his three friends, they're all there. We're not told if they know each other that well. Ezekiel does mention them, but it's just something to think about. So Ezekiel is writing to people who are in exile and to people who are not who may be in exile, or at least are going to be in trouble. And so it's divided into these sections. 1 to 24 is the reason that Judah is in Babylon. This is why you're there. And he just goes through a whole bunch of different things, including the idea that the Lord has left the temple. If you remember the tabernacle in the wilderness and the temple in Jerusalem, both times God comes down to those, and his glory is seen there. But in Ezekiel, it goes the opposite way. God leaves it. And when we see the rebuilt temple in places like Haggai and so forth, there's no indication God has come back. And so that doesn't occur for another 600 years. And then chapters 25 to 32, the nations are judged. And it's just, Egypt is one of the nations, Tyre is one of the nations, but a couple of them are like blood relatives, like children of Lot, children of Esau, Edom, Ammon, and things like that. And Moab isn't mentioned, but I'm sure that's one of them that is included. 33 is about the prophet, and we'll talk about him when we get there. And then the rest of the book is about the restoration of Israel back to the land, or Judah back to the land, or both of them. It depends on how the phrasing is written there. The theme of Ezekiel, which is I find interesting, is we've looked at themes like the fear of the Lord and the Holy One of Israel. There's not a lot of verses, maybe 15 to 20, but this theme in Ezekiel has 71 verses. It's mentioned 71 times, and it's from chapter 6 to 39. So it doesn't even cover a number of chapters. And the theme is, then you will know that I am the Lord. They've forgotten God. And so Ezekiel is constantly reminding not just Israel, but the nations around, then you will know that I am the Lord. And it's seen both in judgment, which is the primary emphasis in the early parts, and then in the restoration of Israel to the promised land. So we'll look at some that I've highlighted. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to make them. We'll see what comes along in this. We'll start with the first time it's mentioned in chapter 6, beginning in verse 7. But this is, we'll start in verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me. Ezekiel is also has a lot of illustrations and a lot of visions. He has visions of all kinds, chariots and the cherubim, and you look at those visions and you're just amazed at the things he sees. But he's also, God uses him as illustrations, and there's a debate as to whether this was just sort of, did he really go out and lay on his side for 390 days and then flip over and lay for 40 more days? Well, you think about that, it's a little over a year. That's pretty tough to lay on one side for that period of time. But it's probably just during the day, and then he would go home and then come back. One of the illustrations, which we'll maybe touch on, is that Ezekiel's wife dies, and God says, do not mourn for her. So that's pretty hard there, when you think about that. So there's all kinds of things that come up in Ezekiel in God's way of emphasizing why the nation is where it is. It's not there just because they were conquered by Babylon. They're there because of what they've done. And yes?
I like the one when he asked about the dry bones.
Yeah, that's another one. That's a fun one. And if we have time, we'll get to that one too. That's the Valley of Dry Bones, all that coming together. What a sight that would have been. You just see all this, But anyway, so chapter 6, the Son of Man, set your face against the mountains of Israel, prophesy against them and say, you mountains of Israel, hear the word of the sovereign Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says in the mountains and hills and the ravines and valleys. I am about to bring a sword against you, and I will destroy your high places. Your altars will be demolished, your incense altars will be smashed, and I will slay your people in front of you, in front of your idols. So there's one of the problems. I will lay the dead bodies of the Israelites in front of their idols. I will scatter their bones around your altars. Wherever you live, the towns will be laid waste, and the altars will be laid waste and devastated. Your idols are smashed and ruined, your incense altars broken down, and what you have made wiped out. Your people will fall slain among you, and you will know that I am the Lord. And so there it is. When these things start to happen, you will know who God is and who is God. And it's not your idols, because they're not going to be left. There's nothing left of them. And so idolatry was a major problem for Israel. And while we don't see it too much physically in the sense of idols being made, we do have problems with idolatry if we're not careful. So it's not something that's new or hidden, but other places you'll see a lot more of the idols or and their statues and things like that. Where you go to Greece or Rome, there's not only the Christian aspects, but there's also the Roman and Greek things that you will see there. If you go further to the Far East, you'll see idols. Totem poles in the Native American thing, there's some are, some aren't, kind of a mixture there, but there were still some there that some talk about. So it's there. I've been in Japan. It's amazing as you walk through near a temple and all the idols that are there, or some type of celebration that involves them bringing in the idols and setting them up. But again, there's the sarcasm. They had to bring them in. They didn't walk in on their own. So there's the difference. Verse 10 of chapter 6, he talks about their despicable practices, their lust after idols, and then he says, they will loathe themselves for the evil they have done and for all the detestable practices, and they will know that I am the Lord. So we go back to Psalm 137. Sing to us a song of Zion, a song of joy. How can we do that when we're away from Jerusalem? And they're in mourning or lament and crying out in a very powerful lament about their situation, wishing other things would happen. But it's a reminder why they're where they are. And then just dropping down, verse 13, one who is far away will die of a plague. One who is near will die of the sword. Anyone who survives and is spared will die of famine. So I'll pour out my wrath on them, and they will know that I am the Lord. When their people lie slain among their idols, among their altars, on every high hill and on all the mountaintops. So it was the mountains that where the idolatry was occurring. It was the mountains where people were going to. And so that's just something to see in Israel. And they continue to find, archaeologists continue to find interesting things from different, it's not just Israelites or Jewish things that are found in the ground. They find all kinds of interesting little things, even coins with people unexpectedly being on them, and surprisingly. If you remember the story in Jesus asked when asked about paying taxes, whose image is on there? And they said Caesar's. Why were they walking around with coins with Caesar on? These were people who said, we don't want any idols in the temple, but they had a coin that had Caesar's head on it, and you had to think, what? Scratch your head. What's going on here? And so there's this idea being emphasized there. And then verse 14 also, it just, again, talking about their wickedness. And that's what these first 24 chapters are about, the sins of Israel, the things they've done that caused them to go there. And you can read through there. Idolatry is one of them. But they filled Jerusalem with blood. And so whatever that type of thing was involved in there, we'll talk about another one when we get chapter 20. Verse 12, chapter 12, verse 15, 16, he talks about the exile. They will go, this is rebellious people, verse 3, and why the illustration here is Ezekiel digging through the wall and trying to escape with his belongings. Put them on your, verse 6, put them on your shoulder as they are watching, carry them out at dusk, cover your face so that they cannot see the land where I've made you a sign to the Israelites. And he did what he was commanded. In the morning the word of the Lord came to him. Son of man, did not the Israelites, that rebellious people, ask you what you're doing? And say to them, this prophecy concerns the prince in Jerusalem and all the Israelites who are there. Say to them, I am assigned to you, as I have done, so it will be done to them. They will go into exile. Now they were telling, in the historical accounts, they were telling the kings, oh no, we're going, in 2 years everything will be fine. In 2 years we'll be delivered. And the prophets of God were saying, okay, if you think so, just remember this. And this is one of Ezekiel's things. They were saying that. They were saying everything's fine. There won't be any problem. But when they're carried off into captivity, and verse 15, they will know that I am the Lord. When they are dispersed among the nations and scattered them through the countries. So it's again, the phrase is used as a warning. When this happens, you will know who God is. And that was the challenge. Are your idols or is the Lord? And that's the battle back and forth. So, the land will be laid desolate. So in verse 20, then you will know that I am the Lord. Chapter 6, where it's used in chapter 16 and 17, it's about the covenant. Chapter 16 especially lists a lot of the sins of Israel. We won't read through that, but you can see it. And then sometimes it's compared to Sodom. And so if there was anything that anyone would compare it to, Sodom was, if you think of worst wickedness in the Scripture, other than before the flood, it was Sodom. Sodom was so bad. And lists all the sins of Sodom. Ezekiel lists, and there are just a number of them that are involved in that. And so near the end, I will deal with you as you deserve, verse 39, because you have despised my my oath by breaking the covenant. And so the covenant is broken. Now, he'll pick that up again in 36, 37. He'll pick up the covenant, and it's going to be different. It's going to reverse, or will renew, or establish a new covenant with you. So, but right now they broke it. And again, when you read Jeremiah 31, Hebrews 8, it's not, the covenant wasn't the problem. The people were the problem. And that's important for us to realize. It's the people who did it. Covenant was fine. They broke the covenant. And so now you have to go back and say, which covenant are we talking about? Most of the time we think it's the law, but in reality it goes back even further to the nation. In Exodus 19, I will make my covenant with you, and this will be the covenant. And well, that was the problem, or the distinction being made there. And so it wasn't the law, even though they broke the law, it wasn't the law per se. It was the covenant God made with them. You be my holy people. Well, they were the ones that broke it. And so there's a challenge there for them. It's cold and you're all quiet, so. Anyway, go ahead.
He always, if you notice them, if you count the many of times, he said, and they will know that I am their God, our God.
Yeah.
He kept emphasizing that.
I didn't catch that last part.
He kept emphasizing.
Oh, yeah, he had
Yeah. Addressed that. It's
Right.
If you're not getting the message the first time or getting it the second time, I'm going to keep repeating
Right.
until it gets.
Well, yeah, and it's and there's a reason for that, and that's in chapter 33. They love to hear this. You would just love. I know preachers will love this. You know, oh, God says to Ezekiel, they love to hear you speak. Oh, good. I like that too. They don't pay attention, but they love to hear you speak. They don't care about your word. Oh, wait a minute, you know. And so, and it gets a little frightening. You know, politicians think the same thing. Oh, people just think you're a wonderful orator. Oh, they don't pay any attention to you, but you know, we're not going to listen to your words, but you're wonderful. What? That's not what's supposed to be, you know. And so, preachers, politicians, you just any professors, just pick somebody. You know, even parents, you know.
And then another thing too, he looked and communicated to Jerusalem in a metaphor
Yeah.
of a wife.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just hammering away at it in every way he could to get their attention. Chapter 20, again, Israel, it's still a list of the sins, so it's not that we have to read all these different ones, but he goes somewhat through their history. I brought you out of Egypt, verse 9, to keep my name from being profaned among the nations. Therefore I led them out of Egypt, brought them into the wilderness. I gave them signs, or I gave them the Sabbath as a sign between us, so they would know that I, the Lord, made them holy. So there's some of that idea there. But then they rebelled in the wilderness, and he goes through this history. I am the Lord your God, follow my decrees, then you'll know that I am the Lord your God. But again, it keeps talking about their rebellion. And so he says this, and it's kind of an interesting, I'm trying to find the text here. I marked this as, read this chapter, and then there's one verse in there. Oh, okay. So he gives them their laws and their statutes. Then verse 25, so I gave them other statutes that were not good, and laws through which they could not live. defiled them through their gifts, the sacrifice of every firstborn, that I might fill them with horror, so they would know that I am the Lord. The debate is, did God give them other statues that were not good? And then the other part of the debate is, what does he mean by every firstborn? Well, human sacrifice came into play. That's what the city filled with blood is about. They were offering their children as sacrifices, which, of course, makes no sense. If you offer your children as a sacrifice, you won't have any children left. Well, it shouldn't make any sense. When we look at societies, Western societies in particular, children tend to be either eliminated or not even created because people don't want to have kids for whatever reason. So there's some problems there involved in that. Go ahead.
And he also just let them go. Let them do whatever they wanted to do.
Right.
Because it wasn't going to lead to life. It
Right.
also was going to lead to death. He said, I left them to do whatever they need to do.
And that brings us to Romans 1, where he says there, Paul says that he just turned them over to do what they wanted. And so I think that's what the idea that Ezekiel is expressing here. Okay, I'll give you other statues. You want to follow these gods? Go ahead. You want to make up all this stuff about idolatry? Go ahead. And he turned them over to do what they wanted. And so Paul isn't just writing to a Roman society and saying, well, this is the way Roman society is, or Greek society. Go back to Ezekiel and see what Ezekiel has to say. This isn't something that's unusual. Even my people did that. Just turned them over to do what they wanted. And I think he's reminding the Jews of Israel, of Jews of Rome, this is the situation. Go back and read Ezekiel, because look what happened there. And so you need to kind of take another look at what's going on. And this is the problem that they have, especially in this situation. Not only were they just messing everything up in idolatry, they're messing everything up everywhere else in their life, turning people over to do what they wanted, and then saying, well, the Lord is with us. If you knew who I was, you would know I'm not with you, that I'm not involved in this, that I have rejected this. And that's Ezekiel's point. He keeps telling them, you will know that I am the Lord if you recognize all these different things. And the 71 times, if I count right, which is questionable sometimes, you will find that used in Ezekiel. So it's an amazing emphasis that Ezekiel is saying there. One of the saddest parts of Ezekiel's message is in 24. Mentioned that earlier. Ezekiel's wife dies, and he talks about the Lord has spoken. Let's see, verse 15 and following. Son of man, with one blow I am about to take away from you the delight of your eyes. Yet do not lament or weep or shed any tears. Groan quietly. Do not mourn for the dead. Keep your turban fastened and your sandals on your feet. Do not cover your mustache or beard or eat up the customary food of mourners. And the people will say, won't you tell us what these things have to do with us? Why are you acting like this? And then he goes on to talk about why they've desecrated the sanctuary. Their sons and daughters have fallen by the sword. And Ezekiel will be assigned to you, verse 24. You will do just as he has done. In the idea of mourning, you won't have time to mourn. You'll have your turbans on, your sandals on, and you'll be walking toward Babylon. When this happens, you will know that I am the Lord. So again, it's an illustration that God uses. Unfortunately for Ezekiel, it's a pretty sad one in that sense, that he will lose his wife. Yeah. So, right. So it's something that people need to realize because they still hadn't recognized who the Lord was. And so we've gone through 24 chapters. We've mentioned all these texts, and they're still saying, nah. And so until you get to where it's really bad, which would be Babylon, you may think, nah, none of this is happening. Ezekiel's a nut. Why would we pay attention to him? What's all the laying on your side and using your wife's death as this or that and calling us all the names you've called us? And some of those stories are really pretty interesting and powerful.
Kind of symbolic with Hosea and his wife.
Yeah, that would be one. I think David and Bathsheba's situation would be another that you can look at. So there's just some of these illustrations, and even Jesus has some interesting things to say about it. 25 through 32 talks about the nations. I mentioned that earlier. Why these nations, and why should they know the Lord? And you start to think, well, Ammon is a child of Lot, grandson of Lot, and Moab. I said I didn't know if it mentioned Moab. There it is. Moab is as well. I was sleeping last night when I was making notes on this, and missed that one completely. So Moab again, related to Lot. There's Seir or Edom. That's another one. That's Esau. And so these are your cousins. That's the right way to say it. Or cousins 16 times removed. I don't know, however you say those types of things. So you should know these things. And some of these are being, especially Edom, is taking it on the chin because they were rooting for the Babylonians, which really is not the safest thing to do. Go Babylonians, destroy the place, and we'll take over. They thought. It doesn't work that way, but that's what they thought. And if you really want a message to Edom, go to Obadiah and read that one chapter and see what happened to them. Philistines, that again, the sea peoples, they think that these people came from the Greek islands. It could be Crete, or it could be some of the islands that we all sail to, out Patmos and places like that. They could have come from there. For some reason, they ended up in this area on land, but they were on the coastal areas and not the mountains. Though it was a back and forth battle between Israel and Philistia over the years, eventually, again, swept away with Babylon. Tyre was an important industrial city, trading city. It was a port city, and it set itself apart. Literally, they built it on they made an island, a causeway, and they could if they could destroy the causeway, you couldn't get to them. And the Babylonians tried and failed to do that. Alexander the Great, however, was much more ingenious, and he eventually did it. He took care of them. But there's a lot of texts involved with Tyre. We can read through and discuss that, but it's about trade. And Revelation may fit into this a little bit because it's Revelation, especially 17 and 18, they talk about being a trade, place of trade and commerce and things like that. And so people come, look forward to being with Rome, and then the next thing you find out, it's destroyed. Oh, where are we going to go? What's going to happen to us? And, so there's an attack on that commerce. Sidon, again, another issue that they resisted Israel coming out of Egypt. Egypt is mentioned. Egypt, again, they're taking a little bit of beating as well. It's interesting, and I didn't really go look for this, but I think it's in Isaiah or Jeremiah that both Egypt and Assyria end up being in the good graces of God after everything, So Egypt has its moments of this and that. Israel was told, don't go back to Egypt. They went back to Egypt. They dragged Jeremiah to Egypt. And we know by the time the first century rolled around, God sends Joseph and Mary to Egypt. Egypt has a big Jewish population in Alexandria. It has a lot of towns where there were Jewish populations. Elephantine Island up the Nile. Get the right phrase. Up the Nile, big island, lots of Jewish people there. So Egypt has this back and forth.
The Nile was Egypt's pride and joy.
Oh, yeah, still is. So, be that as it may, those are the same phrases. Then you'll know that I'm the Lord. So, it's a warning to these nations when these things happen. It's not your idols. You need to go back and think about where you came from. Esau, Lot. Think about those stories that involve them, and say, hey, this is what God did, and especially if you're from Lot. Remember those towns that were kind of in trouble back then, like Sodom and Gomorrah? Maybe we need to pay a better attention to what's going on. And so sometimes we forget our history. Sometimes we forget the bad things that have happened. But we do that with our own lives too. We'll just put the bad things out of our mind. As you get older, and this is a warning for everybody. As you get older, those bad things keep popping up in your mind. I did that. Oh, how horrible that was. Why did I do that? And I think of all the things that have happened over the years. So anyway, that's some of that. 33 is the prophet. He talks about, let me see what time it is here. He talks about, to the prophet, he's the watchman on the wall. He's telling them, he's giving the warning to them. For instance, in, verse 25, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Since you eat meat with the blood still in it, and look to your idols and shed blood, should you then possess the land? You rely on your sword, you do detestable things, and each of you defile his neighbor's wife. Should you then possess the land? So again, there's a warning there, and the sins are listed. And then he goes on to say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, and talks about, I will give to the wild animals to devour, you to be devoured by the wild animals, and a plague, and so these are things that are mentioned. You think about the plague, it's Egypt, wild animals. If the fewer the people, there are they're not as many today, obviously, but there are wild animals there. But we think about it here as well. Packs of dogs would be more of an urban thing. But you go walking in the woods. California is somewhat notorious for that, but other places like some of the Montana, Idaho, places like that, if you're by yourself, you come across a grizzly, that's a little, that's a little frightening. People tell you, we have these rules. If it's a black or brown bear, you do this. If it's a grizzly, you do that. And I'm thinking, it doesn't matter. Don't think so. I had a customer at Walmart. He traveled to Alaska. He wanted to move to Alaska, but he traveled with his wife to Alaska. And so we were talking one day. He said, yeah, we were kind of walking by a stream and started to see pieces of fish floating by. He said, "Oh, I wonder what's going on." And his wife said, "I don't want to know." And she went the other way. And he said, "Well, I'm going to go check it out." And there's a grizzly bear up there. Kind of a frightening thing. So wild animals, mountain lions and things. Even here in Texas, you got some of those pumas and other little things that float around. So I think I saw one morning going to work. Because it ran not just outside our neighborhood in Cypresswood. This thing ran across the road, and I looked at it. So, well, there's a deer. No, that didn't look like a deer. It had a tail. And I'm thinking, that was a cat. I said, oh, out of the woods, and just what we need around the neighborhood. So, yeah, the wild animals, and again, he concludes in saying, when these things happen, then you will know that I am the Lord. And then verse 30, as for you, son of man, your people are talking together about you by the walls and at the doors of the houses, saying to each other, come and hear the message that has come from the Lord. My people come to you as they usually do and sit before you to hear your words, but they do not put them into practice. Their mouths speak of love, but their hearts are greedy for unjust gain. Instead, to them you are nothing more than one who sings love songs with a beautiful voice and plays an instrument well, for they hear your words, but they do not put it into practice. When all this comes true, and that's everything listed in the chapter, and it surely will, then you will know, or they will know that a prophet has been among them, or that I am the Lord. So there's again that idea being expressed there. So for Ezekiel, really encouraging words. It's like Isaiah gets in chapter 6, I'll go. Yeah, here's the message. Wait a minute. It's not exactly a message that I want to, it's not very positive. And again, if a missionary came here and said, I'm going to go to wherever, but here's the message, I'm going to preach till you're all destroyed. That's really not a message we want to get across. But that's sort of the idea that goes, that being there. So, but the truth of the matter is they weren't going to listen to him. They weren't going to listen to Isaiah. They weren't going to listen to Ezekiel. And if you think about Jesus, a prophet is without honor in his own hometown. So, go ahead.
You getting tired of me speaking?
Well, somebody has to besides me.
They always surrender. There was always a few.
Yeah.
That was among, no matter what the situation was, there was a few.
Yep. And you look at Ezekiel, you look at Daniel and his friends, and you realize these people are swept up in the sins of the nation. They were faithful to God. They put up with a lot of garbage, the fiery furnace and the lion's den and wherever else that could be thrown at them.
He said when you talked about Isaiah, even though he said everything I have is like filthy rags, see all the guilt when they put that coal or that fire up to his mouth, God released him of all of that.
Yeah.
And then when he questioned him, he had already chosen Isaiah from the beginning, but then Isaiah said, I will go, not knowing what the past really was.
Right.
And every prophet, we all, even as followers today, we take that oath and we say we will go, not knowing what the consequences.
That's true. That part is true. Yeah, we don't know what's coming. So we like to think everything is hunky-dory. Is that too old of a word? Everything's fine. So anyway. All right, chapters 34 to 39. Chapter 40 to 48 is a picture of the restoration of, an exaggerated picture of the restoration of the temple. We're not going to look at that. But some of the things in particular in chapter 36 and 37 in the restoration of Israel become important. So in 36, beginning in verse 24, for I will take you, they are in captivity. So here's what Ezekiel's saying. For I will, speaking for God, for I will take you out of the nations and will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. I will, let's see, I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you, reminiscent of Jeremiah 31. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God. I will save you from all your uncleanliness. I will call for the grain and make it plentiful, and will not bring famine upon you. I will increase the fruit in the trees and the crops of the field, so you will no longer suffer disgrace among the nations because of famine. Then you will remember your evil ways and wicked deeds. You will loathe yourselves for your sins and detestable practices. I want you to know that I am not doing this for your sake, declares the sovereign Lord. Be ashamed and disgrace for your conduct, people of Israel. And then he goes on to talk about verse 35. They will become like the Garden of Eden. Cities will be that lie in ruins, will be fortified and inhabited. And so everything is reversed. The chaos is reversed, and a new creation is occurring in all this. And you think about some of the things that are that he's saying there, the famine. These are warnings. You go back to Deuteronomy 28 through 30, and you see, if you follow me, I'll bless you. If you don't follow me, I'll curse you. And so it's a fulfillment of those texts here, and it's a reminder. You want to know when these things happen? When you come back from Israel, from captivity, from Babylon, like Nehemiah. And Nehemiah 9 and Daniel 9 are prayers of repentance. So you can Nehemiah after captivity, so you can read that and see Nehemiah, this is what God called us to repentance. And when he prays that, then the people would say, I know that you are the Lord, because God said that's what was going to happen. So a reminder to them, that's what's going to happen. Now, after the captivity, and this is a generalized statement, but idolatry was pretty well cured for the Israelites after the captivity. They really didn't go back to being idol worshipers. And by the time Rome comes, by 167 BC, when Antiochus the fourth comes to Jerusalem because Rome basically told him, you can't come to Egypt. He's mad, and so he offers a pig on the altar. That sets up a civil war or rebellion by the Maccabees, and so that just was unacceptable. You can start to see they're recalling their history. This is what they're recalling. We're not going to go back that way. And so and the Jewish people won that. And then when Pompey came into Israel in 63 BC, he wanted to put Roman standards and some type of idol in the temple. And basically everybody told him, no, we're not going to do that. That wouldn't go over well at all. And so Pompey backed off. Even with the power of Rome, he realized this is not probably the best thing to do right now. So there are some interesting side stories to things that happened between the Testaments that fulfill this idea. They were not going to go back to idolatry. Now, you probably can find somebody who did, but I'm just... Herod the Great was not... He was only part Jewish. He compromised a lot of things. He was in it for himself. And so one of the things he did in northern Israel was to put up... he built temples to Caesar. He was one of the original Caesar worship guys. So just keep that in mind. Even though he's rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem and does other building projects from Masada to the coast, He was a politician that tried to keep him good with everybody. So that's maybe, there are exceptions to some of that. Not that the people approved of that, by the way. They didn't necessarily say, "Hey, good job, Harriet." They probably wanted to, well, anyway, we wanted to, that's why he's paranoid. Somebody wanted to kill him. We had the Valley of Dry Bones. Yay. This is a great story and a great illustration. It's you have this picture, the hand of the Lord, chapter 37. The hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord, set me in the middle of a valley that was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. And he asked me, "Son of man, can these bones live?" And Sovereign Lord, you alone know. Good answer. Who knows? But it's just the picture here. And bones was uncleanliness. That was sort of the idea. So these are unclean. This is, you don't go where this is just, no, Anyway, then he said to me, "Prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Sovereign Lord says to the bones. I will make breath into you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord." And so he does that, and this is a great part. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. Now, can you just picture that? At Halloween, some people have these skeletons that you shake them and they make noise. Can you imagine? This great valley with all these bones flying all over the place, coming together. And if they're scattered, your tibia, is that one of them? Maybe over there, 200 yards, it's coming to your body, I know I'm exaggerating this, but did Ezekiel have to duck a few times to just avoid being hit by a bone flying by? And all these bones come together, making all this noise. Can you imagine what that sounded like? And then you're sitting there and watching all these tendons start to come on. Now this is good sci-fi stuff, right? All the tendons start to come on, and blood vessels are coming together, and you start seeing organs, and then flesh and everything, and hair, and eyelashes and brows, and ears and all that kind of stuff. And so you have this great coming together. And so now you have a valley of dead bodies. And then in verse 9, prophesy to the breath, prophesy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the Sovereign Lord says, come, breathe from the four winds and breathe into these slain that they may live. And he prophesied, and they came to life and stood up on their feet, a vast army. And so that is the vision that Isaiah has. From a valley of dry bones to an army standing there. If you've seen, what's the one with, no, Brandon, what's his name? The Mummy. You remember The Mummy? One of the mummies, whichever picture it was, all those Egyptian soldiers come to life, and marching along. So you got this kind of picture here. Anyway, that way you can tell David I mentioned a movie in my class. That'll make him happy. And I also need to mention that he's preaching on love the Lord your God and soul, mind, and strength today. Okay. Anyway, the rest from 11 on, he explains that this is Israel coming back to life, coming back to where it should be. We won't get into the last two chapters because that's Gog and Magog, and we're not going to spend. And I've run out of time. Y'all need to talk more. Well, anyway. Thanks for being here. And there's a bunch of stuff over there besides donuts, so feel free to grab something. Stay warm and be careful. In fact, don't get on the road Tuesday or Wednesday, or Monday or Tuesday. That way I don't have to go anywhere. And I won't anyway. Because y'all don't know how to drive down here, and I've forgotten. All right, have a good night, a good week. I've forgotten how to drive.